Have you ever rehearsed your final step? There is a moment when time stops walking forward. A moment with no sound, no shape, when everything we once were begins to fold inwards, like a shirt forgotten on a quiet Sunday clothesline. Death doesn't arrive in haste or cruelty, it dances. And its dance is slow, assured, as if it always knew where to place its feet in the dusty room of our awareness. The silence before this goodbye is not empty. It's saturated with memories, chills, questions never asked aloud. Photographs begin to stare back at us. Furniture shifts, even when untouched. And something in our eyes begins to age at a pace the face cannot follow. The choreography of the end begins long before the last breath. In the glances we avoid, in the calls we postpone, in the prayers we don't dare speak for fear they might be answered. Picture a woman alone in the center of a bare room, surrounded by chairs turned to the wall. She spins slowly, as if waiting for a partner who never comes. Each step echoes like the last. She does not fear the dance. She fears the silence between movements. The choreography of goodbye isn't made of perfect steps, but of pauses heavy with meaning. When did we lose rhythm with life? When did we start pretending the end was only for others, that the light would always pass through the windows? Time intoxicates us with promises of continuity, but goodbye is the only certainty we breathe together. Have you heard that quiet calling too? That whisper that does not threaten but invites, as if death itself were not an interruption, but a reunion with all we forgot to love? The first rehearsal for goodbye begins long before the body gives in. It starts with small forgettings, names that slip away like dry leaves, birthdays passing without candles, smiles we can no longer hold fully. It's a choreography learned through weight, not grace. Every new ache, every sudden absence, every night's sleep refuses to come. All of it teaches the body to bow, to quiet, to yield. In hospital corridors, there's a scent that isn't medicine. It's the smell of condensed time. Time of waiting, of whispered "I'm here's" when no one's listening. In these places, death is not a monster. She's an old nurse with warm hands who's seen everything. She doesn't shout, doesn't take. She invites. She waits, seated, like a patient mother, while the living try to remember the way home. There comes a moment when we stop fighting, not out of weakness but clarity. Life unfolds like a fabric slowly thinning. It doesn't tear, it simply becomes translucent. And when the wind passes through the soul, it doesn't hurt. It only raises a shiver. Fear becomes smaller than weariness. And in that instant, the dance changes. It's no longer about resistance, but surrender. A final step not seeking applause, only ground. Those who've looked into the eyes of someone about to leave know there's a wisdom there the living can't hold for long, a calm that doesn't belong to this world, a silence that asks for no answers, only witness. Sometimes death arrives like a silent ferryman. No name is called, no baggage required, just a hand extended, no face, no urgency. And strangely, deep down, we already knew him. He's not new, not a stranger. He's like that familiar figure from childhood dreams, always waiting by the riverbank. The crossing has no schedule, but when it comes, the body knows. It warms from within with a different flame, not of life, but of acceptance. Now picture a long hallway, windows lining both sides. Outside, there is no landscape, only light. As you walk this corridor, familiar faces begin to appear at the edges of your sight. They do not speak. They do not move. They simply exist, like memories that never left. And here you understand, death is not a place. It is a deep remembering of what we were before we became someone. At this stage, the choreography of goodbye is no longer made of visible gestures. It becomes internal. The dance turns to breath. Each inhale comes from somewhere deeper. Each exhale is a quiet surrender. Fingers unclench. The jaw softens. And the soul begins to loosen from the body like a child finally letting go of a parent's hand at the edge of the street. In that moment, there is no fear. Only a kind of beauty the living can no longer comprehend. A beauty that doesn't wish to be seen. only felt, like the presence of something sacred in an abandoned place. If death is a presence, perhaps life was simply the absence of it all along. And only now in this final step do we realize who we've been dancing with from the very beginning. There is a second before the end when everything lights up, but not with light. It glows with meaning. What was once tangled becomes clear, not because it was explained, but because it no longer needs to be. Grievances lose their names. Fears dissolve into formlessness. And love, that love we often refused, stretches wide like a golden wheat field, silent and endless, brushing the edge of the soul. In this final movement, death is no longer absence, but mirror. She shows what was left unsaid, but also what was spoken through eyes, through gestures, through presence. She reveals the beauty of what cannot be carried, the laughter of a forgotten morning, the scent of childhood, the warmth of a tired hand. She shows that the essential was never meant to fit into words nor promises. Now imagine an empty stage. At its center, an old pair of shoes, worn, still warm. The body is gone, but the dance lingers in the air, suspended like dust caught in light. Those who watch this stage understand. There is no ending, only transformation. What danced now floats. What breathed now becomes wind. And what we feared was always within us, waiting to be seen. And that is when life, in some strange and quiet way, begins again, not as a return but as expansion. Death, when faced without resistance, does not conclude. It reveals. It shows the thread that always connected us. It unveils what we are when names no longer bind us. It whispers the eternity hidden within stillness. Perhaps that was the dance's teaching all along. The goodbye is not the end of the music. It is the pause where we finally hear its origin. The final dance never ends. It only shifts rhythm and vanishes from the eye. What seemed like an ending was a passage. What we called death may have only been the edge of the visible. We remain at the threshold, feet still touching the floor of this world, watching the silence that moves without needing a body. And then we understand. We don't need to understand death. We only need not to fear it. The choreography of goodbye doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for surrender. It whispers that to live well is to rehearse our departure with gentleness, that dying is not failing, but returning home, slowly, without performance, with the soul barefoot. Perhaps the greatest act of courage is this, to leave without needing to win anything, simply thankful to have danced. And you? Have you started hearing your exit song? Have you noticed the silence between heartbeats as part of the melody too? There is no need to rush, only to be present. Death didn't come to take me. She came to remind me. If this video stirred something deep within you, share it with someone who needs silence more than answers. Subscribe to keep dancing with us, even in the stillness.